build a V-taper fast focus on these 3 muscles. 3 months ago, I saw this skinny guy walk into the gym wearing the baggiest hoodie possible. Nothing unusual, until he took it off. Bro looked completely different from the front. Wide shoulders, crazy back width, tiny looking waist, the kind of physique that instantly makes people think, yeah, this guy works out. And the weird part, his arms weren't even that huge. So obviously I asked him what he was training, expecting some insane secret workout split, but his answer genuinely surprised me. He said most people waste years chasing bigger arms and chest, while the real V-taper look comes from focusing on just 3 muscles almost nobody prioritizes correctly, and once he explained it, it actually made perfect sense. The first thing he told me was something most fitness influencers never explain properly. He said, the body isn't judged muscle by muscle, it's judged by proportions. And honestly, once he said that, I couldn't unsee it. Think about it. 2 people can weigh the exact same, even have similar muscle mass, but one looks athletic and aesthetic while the other just looks bulky or average. Why? Because the brain notices shape first, specifically shoulder width compared to waist width. That's literally the visual illusion behind the V-taper. According to sports physiology research, the muscles that create the strongest upper body width illusion are the lateral deltoids, upper lats, and upper chest clavicular region, not biceps, not forearms, not endless bench press sessions. That's why some guys train for years, gain decent size, and still don't look wide. Their muscle development is centered in the wrong places. The guy explained it in the funniest way possible. He said, most gym bros are building refrigerators when they should be building triangles. And weirdly, he was right. The first muscle he told me to prioritize was the lateral deltoid, basically the side part of your shoulders. This muscle alone can completely change how broad your body looks from the front. In fact, EMG-based exercise studies consistently show that lateral delt development has one of the biggest visual impacts on shoulder-to-waist ratio. Here's the problem though. Most people barely train it properly. They destroy their front delts with heavy pressing movements like bench press and shoulder press, but the side delts remain underdeveloped. That's why their physique starts looking thick instead of wide. And honestly, this happens because ego lifting takes over. People love exercises where they can move heavy weight, but side delts respond insanely well to controlled tension, higher reps, and clean form. He told me he stopped chasing heavy dumbbells and started focusing on one thing, making the side delts burn as possible. And that completely changed his physique. Scientifically, this actually makes sense. The lateral deltoid has a shorter resistance curve in many movements, meaning momentum can easily take tension away from the muscle. That's why swinging dumbbells during lateral raises is almost useless for growth. What worked for him instead was slowing the movement down, slightly leaning forward, and stopping just above shoulder height. Nothing flashy, just consistent tension. And the craziest part? He said his waist started looking smaller without losing any fat. That's the illusion nobody talks about. You don't always need an insanely tiny waist to look aesthetic. Sometimes you just need enough upper body width to create contrast. And the side delts do that incredibly well. Then he brought up the second muscle, the lats. This is where things got really interesting because apparently most people think they're training lats, when they're actually training everything except the lats. He asked me a simple question. When you do pull exercises, do you feel your arms dying first? And honestly, yeah, that's exactly what happens to most people. Their biceps take over every pulling movement because they never learn how to properly engage the lats. Your latissimus dorsi muscles are basically the wings of the V-taper. They create that dramatic width from the back and give the torso that cobra-like shape. Biomechanically, the lats are responsible for shoulder extension and adduction, meaning they work best when you pull your elbows down and slightly inward, not just yank weight toward yourself. That small detail changes everything. The guy told me he spent years doing rows and pull-ups without much back width because he was pulling with his hands instead of his elbows. Once he started thinking about driving elbows toward the hips, his entire back activation changed. And honestly, this lines up perfectly with modern hypertrophy research. Studies on mind-muscle connection show that internal focus, consciously targeting a muscle during movement, can significantly improve activation in certain muscle groups, especially the lats. That's why some people can do 15 pull-ups and still not have a wide back. Movement alone is enough if the target muscles aren't actually receiving most of the tension. He also pointed out another mistake almost everyone makes: only training back thickness. Heavy barbell rows are great, but they often build density more than visible width. For a stronger V-taper effect, exercises like pull-ups, lat pull-downs, and single-arm cable pull-downs can be incredibly effective because they emphasize stretch and width mechanics. And then he said something that honestly sounded fake at first. He said the biggest change in his physique happened when he stopped trying to lift the weight and started trying to stretch the muscle. At first, I thought that sounded like typical fitness guru nonsense, until I looked into the science behind stretch-mediated hypertrophy. Recent muscle growth research suggests that training muscles under tension in lengthened positions may stimulate hypertrophy very effectively. That's one reason why controlled eccentric phases and full range of motion have become such a huge focus in evidence-based training. So instead of half-repping everything with momentum, he slowed down the lowering phase, fully stretched the lats at the top, and suddenly his back started looking wider within months, not because he discovered magic genetics, not because of steroids, just because he finally trained the muscles that actually create the V-shape. And then we got to the third muscle, and honestly, this one surprised me the most, because when people talk about building a V-taper, they usually mention shoulders and lats non-stop. But the guy said there's one area almost nobody pays attention to, and without it, your physique never looks fully complete from the front: the upper chest. Specifically, the clavicular head of the chest. He explained it in such a simple way that it instantly clicked in my brain. He said, if your upper chest is flat, your torso looks like it drops downward. But when the upper chest is developed, your whole frame looks lifted and more powerful. And honestly, once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Look at almost every aesthetic physique online. The guys who look the most athletic usually have that shelf-like upper chest that connects smoothly into the shoulders. It creates that armor-like appearance around the collarbone area. Without it, even decent muscle mass can look incomplete. And scientifically, there's a reason this matters visually. The upper chest contributes to the upper torso silhouette, especially when viewed from the front at eye level. Combined with wide delts and lats, it enhances the illusion of upper body dominance while making the waist appear comparatively smaller. The problem is, most people train chest in the most basic way possible. Flat bench, more flat bench, then even more flat bench, which mainly targets the middle chest and front delts. That's why some guys build a strong chest but still don't look aesthetic. Their upper torso lacks dimension. The guy told me he made one tiny adjustment that changed everything. He stopped treating incline movements like secondary exercises. Instead, incline pressing became his priority, and not those ridiculous, super high incline angles that basically turn the exercise into a shoulder press. He kept the bench around 30 degrees because research on muscle activation shows that moderate incline angles tend to target the clavicular chest fibers more effectively without shifting too much tension onto the shoulders. Again, small change. Massive visual difference. But then the conversation took a turn I honestly didn't expect, because he said the biggest mistake people make isn't bad exercise selection, it's impatience. And that hit hard, because social media completely destroys people's expectations. Someone starts training for 2 weeks and expects to suddenly look like a movie superhero. Then when that doesn't happen, they switch workouts every 5 days looking for some magical program. But muscle growth literally doesn't work like that. Your body adapts through progressive overload, recovery, nutrition, and consistency over time. There's no shortcut around biological adaptation. Muscle protein synthesis increases after resistance training, but visible hypertrophy takes repeated cycles of stimulus and recovery over months. In simple words, your body needs evidence that you truly need more muscle before it spends energy building it. That's why random workouts produce random results. A guy told me something funny that honestly sounded brutal but true. He said, most people train like they're trying to entertain themselves instead of transform themselves. And wow, that explained almost every failed gym journey I've ever seen. People constantly chase novelty, new split, new influencer workout, new challenge, new secret hack. Meanwhile, the people with the best physiques are usually doing boring basics extremely consistently. Think about that for a second. The most aesthetic physiques are often built through repetition, not entertainment. He also explained why recovery matters way more than people realize, especially sleep. And this isn't motivational nonsense, this is straight up physiology. Research consistently shows that sleep deprivation negatively impacts muscle recovery, testosterone production, performance output, and even appetite regulation. So when someone sleeps 4 hours, trains 6 days a week, eats randomly, and wonders why they look exhausted instead of aesthetic, the answer is actually pretty obvious. Your body grows outside the gym, not during the workout itself. The workout is just the signal. Recovery is the construction process. And then we talked about body fat, because this is where a lot of people get confused. They think the V-taper is only about muscle gain, but body composition matters massively too. Even strong shoulder and lat development can get hidden if body fat levels are too high around the waist area. That's because abdominal fat reduces visual contrast between the upper and lower torso. Now obviously, nobody needs to become dangerously shredded. That's neither realistic nor healthy for most people long term, but maintaining a moderate body fat percentage can dramatically improve the visibility of the V-shape. And honestly, this is why some people suddenly look way more muscular after losing fat, even without gaining much muscle. The structure was already there, it just wasn't visible yet. The guy explained it perfectly. He said, fat loss reveals, muscle growth creates, and the combination of both changes your entire appearance. Then he mentioned posture, and I swear this might be one of the most underrated things nobody talks about. Rounded shoulders, weak upper back stability, and poor posture can literally hide your physique. Someone can have decent muscle development and still look narrow because their posture collapses inward. Research in biomechanics and posture shows that scapular positioning affects how the torso appears visually. Standing upright with proper thoracic extension naturally enhances shoulder width presentation and chest positioning. In simpler words, good posture instantly makes you look more athletic. That's why confidence and physique often look connected. Posture changes both. At this point, I realized something important. The V-taper isn't really about chasing size everywhere. It's about strategic development, wide delts, wide lats, upper chest thickness, controlled body fat, good posture. That combination creates the illusion people associate with elite physiques, not giant arms alone, not ego lifting, not doing 1,000 random exercises. And honestly, this explains why some lightweight athletes still look incredible shirtless, while heavier guys sometimes don't look aesthetic at all. Shape matters more than raw size. Before leaving the gym, the guy said one final thing that genuinely stayed in my head for weeks. He said, the goal isn't to become the biggest guy in the room. The goal is to build a physique that changes the way people see you the second you walk in. Whether people admit it or not, first impressions matter. A strong V-taper creates visual presence immediately. It makes clothes fit differently. It changes posture, confidence, and even how people perceive athleticism. But the good news is, this isn't reserved for genetic freaks. Most people simply never train intelligently enough to unlock it. Once you understand which muscles create the illusion and how to train them properly, everything starts making more sense. Your workouts become more intentional, your physique starts looking more balanced, and instead of wasting years doing random exercises, you finally start building with purpose. So if you've been frustrated because your body still looks narrow despite training hard, maybe the problem isn't effort, maybe the problem is focus. Because sometimes transforming your physique isn't about doing more, it's about finally training the right things. And honestly, that changes everything. So now I want to ask you something. Which muscle group do you think is holding your physique back right now? Shoulders, lats, or upper chest? Drop it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's grinding in the gym but still not getting that V-taper look. Because one small change in training focus can completely transform the way your body looks.